I'd like to see tools that allow people to easily construct systems to do the analysis of visualization simulations. Wouldn't it be nice if you could have a graphical interface that had all the components that you need to do at your conceptual level without having to do the programming, and you just plug them all together? And finally, to have the collaboration tools that allow people to work together like they're in the same room, even if they aren't. So we have tools that allow us to talk to each other, synchronous, asynchronous, but I don't think they're quite the same as being in the same room yet. So those kind of things, I think, are things that need to be worked on. So next slide is information on how to get a hold of me. But now I want to put it out to you. What are the things that you're having difficulty with cyber infrastructure? What kind of things would make them easier? Or what is your vision of what cyber infrastructure can do in the future?
Well, this is David Green. I'm a professor in atmospheric science, so I very much like your illustration of Jane, because I'm working on a proposal right now that deals with global warming, and it contains everything that you talked about. Although it's just not myself, it's a collection of about 10 people that will be working on the project. So we have to deal with everything in that when I'm writing my proposal. And the one thing I really want to help with this whole process is access to people that can help me fix problems and get things working, and not have a lot of layers in there to do that. If I want to be able to know who to go to without having to go to one person that goes to another person that goes to a third person and so on, and then 6 months later I get a reply back. That's really what inhibits my work.
So you'd like to just have this one person essentially be your contact to solve your technical problems, and then they would know who to go to for you, and so you wouldn't have to go to each individual expert.
Well, or even knowing the experts, like if I have a network problem, knowing who to go to, because it gets, they don't understand the problems if I get so many layers, and it takes a lot of time. We're going to have meetings about it and this and that. So where a lot of this stuff where you have, very widely dispersed solutions that work for the whole state or something, it's hard for me as a researcher then to change anything because it affects everybody in the state or something. So there's a problem with getting it too non-local, and just knowing who to go to that has something to do, because if you have one person, then all they do is manage it back and forth. I don't know if I'm explaining it too well, but it's...
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, Kim, you can probably take the slides down so we can see each other. So where would you want this person located? Would this be a campus person or a department person, or more maybe on a national resource that you could go to?
It doesn't really matter. I would like ideally to have someone on campus. I can go walk into the office and say, here, this is my problem. Here's what it is. Demonstrate the problem that I'm having. But just know who that person is without having to go to, we go to our person in our college that then goes to the university, that then goes to someone else. And then it comes back down the chain. So every one of them steps, I lose people. I mean, just let me know who, if there's a facilitator, tell me who to talk to, but without having, I want kind of direct access to whoever's going to fix the problem once I find out who that person is. That's kind of...
Yeah, I know what you mean, because in dealing with end-to-end problems, what I found is very often you go to each component that's being used, and everybody will say, well, everything's working fine, but the system as a whole isn't. And so having someone that can understand the whole system would be helpful.
I think, too, that that a lot of what I do as Aaron Bergstrom at UND is is putting people in contact with other people. but the problem is there's already a mechanism set up for troubleshooting on campus, right? You need a website. You're supposed to submit your form to this location, and that gets sent along, and then somebody has to determine whether or not it's approved or whatnot. And you may want a domain name, but somebody at the other end of that saying, well, you don't really rate a domain name. You only rate a sub-account on another server. And so what I do is I actually go around directly to the offices and ask if they can do it instead of having to submit the paperwork. A lot of times that's not the most popular thing with the people on the other end, because now they're doing something outside of the area, outside of the normal mechanism that's set up to handle to keep the chaos at bay, right? Whereas there's a way to do things so everything's orderly, but then a lot of times it's inefficient and doesn't get done quickly for whatever reason. That's
so timeliness ends up being an issue.
Right. Something that I think is becoming increasingly popular at a lot of institutions is having a person or a group of people who are supposed to facilitate the research computing. So what we've been doing for getting on to 10 years now is, first it was I would come to your office for an hour a week and we would just sit together and work on it together. That model doesn't scale very well because we're going to run out of number of hours of me. Then we moved to a help session model where I'd sit in a central PC lab and you or your students, whoever it was, would come in to get help, and we would do that at scheduled times, typically a couple hours a time, twice a week maybe, so 4 or 5 hours a week. That works much better. It didn't work so great that I was doing all of it, so now actually our operations staff now have enough experience that I don't do it anymore. I have not done that in a year and a half. I haven't been to a help session for a year and a half, and yet the system has run very smoothly because one of them learned to do it by hanging out with me while I was doing it, and then the others learned to do it by hanging out with him when he was doing it. My recommendation to institutions in general is to have one or a few people who do that. They will not be able to help you with the science issues as a general rule. The science is your problem. What should be in the input file for that application, that's your problem. But why the run is crashing, more often than not, that's our problem, and we'll help you figure it out. How to write the batch script to run that thing. How to log in and change directory. We'll take responsible for teaching you or your students or whoever it may be, whoever the users are. We'll take responsibility for teaching people that. Once you get past the machine stuff to the science stuff, then it's you and your colleagues and your friends at other institutions and the author of the paper or the person who wrote the application software. Does that answer better?
Yep. Yeah, one thing I've noted is that when a researcher gets started, it's hard for that researcher to know what resources he really needs. So a lot of times they'll go and say, well, I need the best of everything. I need this huge cluster. I need a 10 gig network connection. Whereas if he had someone that knew the technology could sit down and say, well, what is it you really want to accomplish? Then you could come up with the right resources.
My name is Atif Reed Mohammed. I'm a PhD student here at UND in computer science. One of my advisors, Dr. Harsh, is here. And after watching your this presentation, I thought to elaborate a little bit what we are going to propose. That a cloud of individual university, which then can be merged with the statewide university's cloud, and then that goes to states. And then the data storage or the computation that is happening in that certain institution will be having certain signature that you can figure out where you're getting the data from, who's working on it. And the question that the gentleman, the professor asked, you can then go to that cloud and have the services which are invoked in that certain area of your expertise can answer you if there is no person available. And if there is a person available, then certainly that person can help you in that situation. So that is, and my work will be on the basis the ITAR, which is the security, and cloud certainly lacks that at this moment. We are looking into that, and I just got a paper published with like Dr. Marsh and Dr. Grant that discusses that individual security issues, because if an information which is which is for the United States and goes out of the border in case of phishing or any sort of infiltration, can bring the person within the United States some penalties. It can be imprisonment or anything. So that's what we are looking here, and the use of cyber infrastructure that you just have. So that's very important, but that needs to be under certain cloud, and that cloud can then further merge into the bigger clouds. Thank you.
Yep, makes sense.
Russ, this is Bonnie Mias at NDSU, and as always, I enjoyed your presentation. If we go back and look at the Blue Ribbon Report of 2004 from the National Science Foundation, I think we've actually made a lot of progress, but there's still a lot of coordination and communication that needs to take place. In our own campus experience, we've carved out some time of one of our own people, Kim Owen, who you've met now. And she works with different disciplines, with different faculty on the campus in representing IT, and brings them together, and we find out more about their disciplines and what needs to happen and what they need. I think that's one way of doing it. I know that can't happen on all campuses, but I think it's slowly making progress here. And then having events such as this, just creating awareness, I think will lead us to that. But I do think that there needs to be less silo development and more coordination. But again, I do feel that there's some progress being made there, but we're just not there yet.
Yeah, that's what I've seen as one of the greatest values of the CI days, from all the campuses, is it brings together the people that need to talk that normally don't. Any other thoughts? I think we're about up on the time in any case.
Thank you, Dr. Hobby. That was so interesting and a lot more to think about. Are we going to give him a virtual round of applause?
Thank you.
We know that. Thank you. Enjoy the California weather and be thinking of us. So we will be.
Indeed.